right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm here with Sarah Burton, who is doing an incredible business for all of us disabled people who are interested in the workforce and also people who are in charge of the workforce who need to know more about disability. I am so grateful to have Sarah here today. We just had our lovely little chat about brain fog as I forgot my own name before we started recording. So I'm going to let Sarah talk now about what she is dealing with and also what her business is about. So I really wanted to first ask you about your diagnosis because we have the same things and I know how long it took me to get diagnosed. Yes. So I am so curious about your journey to that place.
Certainly, yes. So I started getting ill many years ago. I think even as a child, I showed signs of being unwell. My mum used to take me to the doctors. They used to fob her off, saying that I was attached to the apron strings, and it was an ongoing process. I was eventually diagnosed multiple times over my childhood with glandular fever and put it all down to that. In my 20s, I started to struggle a bit with tiredness. I had a very busy career. I got to travel around the world, working long hours, having fun as well. So I put it down to that, but I couldn't quite work out why all my colleagues were able to cope with it and I couldn't. And I just slowly got worse. I changed jobs to try and get a job where I was more based at home, but I still continued, tried to change another job. And I got to the point where I was absolutely struggling. All I did was go to work, come home and sleep. And there was nothing else in my life really apart from that. It was, friends and everything obviously got put a bit to the side, unfortunately. And after going backwards and forwards to the doctor for probably at least a year, I eventually got diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, also known as ME. And was told to take 3 months off work. So I did, and at that point I basically found that my body just gave up, and I spent pretty much 3 months in bed trying to get better. I think just stopping work just gave me the chance to, my body just went, okay, that's it, we're not doing anything for a while. Spent a few months in bed.
Here. I'm in the US and you are not. When you said 3 months off, I first off know that my medical bills would have been about $8,000 at this point, and I would have had no help with the time off because our ability to get disability is insane at the best of times. Do you guys have something different where if you get diagnosed with something that the government will help you? Because I know you're probably not paying $8,000 bills.
No, all the medical bills were free, covered. So all the diagnostic tests and everything like that were covered. I obviously, if I have to see some specialists in terms of like physiotherapy or anything like that, then there is some of that covered. But if you want extra, you need to pay for that. In terms of taking time off sick, we do get something called statutory sick pay, and where we get a minimum amount of money being paid, but certain organisations that you work for might cover you for a set number of months. So I was very fortunate that my employer covered me for the 3 months that I had off work.
I'm sorry, I'm just crying in American over here, so just ignore my feelings. So you were able to take the 3 months off, but during that time, your body just went into full time off.
Right, yes, okay. Yeah, and I very much struggled to recover from that. I was able to start working a bit part-time, but eventually had to leave my career. And actually at that time, I also had a child. So my ME consultant said he knew that I was interested in having children, and he said, actually, that might help your ME. And for some people, that does actually help.
That helps?
Yeah. Sometimes it can kickstart the hormones, apparently. And to be honest, during my pregnancy, I was the best I'd ever felt. All my friends who were having children were complaining about how exhausted they were. And I was like, I feel amazing.
It's similar with Ehlers-Danlos. Either just like I was destroyed because I have Ehlers-Danlos and my pregnancies destroyed me. But I have friends who have Ehlers-Danlos where it was the best they've ever felt. They went into remission for like that time. Not saying please go get pregnant and give this a try, because it is a roll of the dice. We're just saying this is weird things that happen to us.
Well, I've had both experiences. My first pregnancy, I felt amazing. My second pregnancy, very much less so.
I mean, you did have another human you were taking care of as well as being as well.
Exactly. So so I ended up having to give up that career, which very much was my identity, and I had so much ambition before that, and I felt I lost that ambition. I did eventually find a very part-time job, but I knew that I could never achieve much in that job. I'll talk about that a bit later anyway, about the business starting. When my daughter was, I had to go and visit the local primary school was shown around by the headmaster and happened to faint on him, which was highly embarrassing. I slid down in the gym onto the floor very elegantly, and I promised myself I would not send my daughter to that school. Although I actually ended up doing it, I decided that wasn't a good enough reason not to send my child there. And I was then referred to a cardiologist to look at if there was anything else going on. And I always felt that the chronic fatigue syndrome diagnosis didn't really sum up everything I was experiencing. I felt that it addressed some of my symptoms, but there was a lot more going on. I had some tests with the cardiologist, including the table tilt test, and he sent me a... It's awful.
He said, I was gonna say it's almost Monty Python levels of torture. Like it feels like it shouldn't be torture, but it is. Like very
really
Dirac moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember trying to order a cup of tea afterwards, and I couldn't work out how to actually ask for a cup of tea. I just had no way of doing that. I don't know what it did to my brain, but it completely scrambled it. But my cardiologist at that point said to me, he then sent me a letter saying that I had vasovagal syndrome, which basically means when you stand up, your blood pressure falls. In between having the table tilt test and getting the result, I'd had this chance conversation with somebody who mentioned POTS syndrome to me. She said, my symptoms sound like POTS. And at the same time, in literally the same week, my dad sent me an article from the newspaper which said that a lot of people who have been diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome actually have POTS as well. So 2 bits of information in the same week for a condition I'd never heard of. And so I went away and read about it, and I was like, this is me. It sums up me completely. And I realised that I'd had the test which could diagnose it. And then I got this letter, and it didn't mention POTS at all. It mentioned vasovagal syndrome. I did something I probably wouldn't have done. I don't know what came into me, but I asked for a call with the consultant, and I challenged him on it and said, is there a possibility I could have POTS? And he said, why would I diagnose you with POTS syndrome, which is quite rare, when I've diagnosed you with something that's very common? And I was like, please just give me 10 minutes of your time. And I explained to him all my symptoms, and he said, okay, I'm going to have a look at your results again, look at your table tilt results. And a few hours later, he called me up and said, yeah, you're right, and that's what you've got. So
do that on a recording, because I feel like that's something that I would like ASMR just to go to sleep peacefully.
It's laughing about it. Yeah, and he then referred me to a POTS consultant. It was about a year waiting list to see him, and who then suggested, based on my symptoms, that I might also have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So then I managed to get diagnosed with that as well. But this is decades in the diagnosis, to be honest. I think I had a Holter monitor test where they look at your heart rate over 7 days, which showed that I had POTS probably about 16 years earlier to being diagnosed, because they were mentioning about the fact my heart rate kept racing, and they put it down to me running, which I don't do. So I felt that something might have been shown quite a lot earlier, and so it's quite frustrating not to have been diagnosed much earlier.
Would have been much safer for you in so many ways. And yeah. I very much vibe you on the running even before I was diagnosed. If you saw me running, you need to also, because the only way I'm running is to get away from something.
Absolutely.
That's the way to ruin a beautiful walk. Yeah. Not a fan of running. I have like 2 different ways I want to go with this, but you know what I'm going to ask you first is about being a parent, because I have so many thoughts. I was diagnosed after having children. And I talked to a lot of people who are, I want kids, but I'm sick and I don't know if I can have them. And this is not telling anyone to go have babies. I am not here to tell you that. I am just here to say, this is a conversation between 2 people who are chronically ill and have kids. And I don't know how I would make it without my kids. I've been very lucky in my kids, but parenting was not the way I was hoping it would go. I really thought I'd be the active mom. I'd be like at the park playing with them, and I was passing out taking my daughter to school. So we had to very much change what a good mom looked like in this household. And we're also going to talk about ambition and chronic illness. But I want to hear from you about like your experience parenting with chronic illness, how you talk to your kids about it, and how you are able to manage with kids, a business, and chronic illness, which is a 24/7 full-time thing. My God. Yes. This is not even a podcast. I'm just trying to get advice is what this is.
Yeah. So my kids are amazing. They're very lucky. Again, I hadn't been diagnosed with POTS or Ehlers-Danlos when I had the 2 girls, but I had been diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, which I had been assured wasn't genetic, so that it wouldn't be passed on. So that very much for me was part of the decision. And also the fact that he said it could actually help my health as well meant that it took away the real concern that I wouldn't be able to cope with pregnancy. So yeah, I couldn't imagine life without children. It took a long time to have my children, and it's been amazing. I think like you, it's very hard. I'm not the mother that I would love to be. I'd love to have much more energy and be able to take part in a lot more activities with them. But they are very understanding. I found that by saying that I was tired, they couldn't really understand what was going on because they know what it's like to be tired and they know how they can get on with things when they're tired. So we now talk to them about the spoon theory, and they really get that. So I just, rather than saying I feel really tired today, I can't do something, I'll say I've run out of spoons, and that just means that they can really grasp what's going on and understand it. That's worked really well. My little one will often try and plug me in. She'll put her hands on me and say she's plugging me in to give me some of her energy, and she'll push me up hills and things like that. Brilliant.
Darling thing I think I've ever heard. Do you want to explain the spoon theory for anyone who's listening who is strangely not familiar? No shade if you're not familiar with spoon theory, but some people don't know what it is, and I just want
absolutely, yes, yeah. So spoon theory is a way of understanding your energy levels. So having an understanding of how many spoons of energy you might start with in a day and how many spoons of energy are used up by doing various different tasks. So having a shower might use up a couple of spoons, and preparing a meal might use up even more spoons. And understanding what the number of spoons you have and how you spend them. So it enables you to work out how you can spend your time during the day without overspending on your spoons and leaving you depleted and then paying for it for a few days afterwards. I think that's probably the best way.
Yeah, I was gonna say the shower is like all the spoons are gone, only knives. Knives are all that's left. I saw that. It was like a little raccoon, like looking super feral and holding a knife. It was like no spoons, only knives. I'm like, you understand me. I just got to throw this out here for anyone who's listening who's like, I do have small children. I am chronically ill and I just can't. What I did that ended up working really well with my youngest was we'd have what we call darling slug days. And I was lucky enough to have an iPad, and I downloaded all these art apps that you could like finger paint and finger like glitter on it, and no glitter on my bed. And we would sit there and do like iPad crafts, and then we would watch like Jane Austen movies. That kept me at least with her, like when she was running around and at that like unaliving yourself level of toddlerness of whatever's dangerous, I'm gonna throw myself at it. At least it's kept her in the bed. So that's just a little like tidbit if anyone wants to use it. I want to talk about ambition and chronic illness because you did have tremendous ambition, an incredible career, and you through no lack of ambition, you had to leave it because of illness. How does this lead to your current life as a CEO?
It's really fun actually because I remember do you know the TV show The Apprentice? I think you have an American version of that.
I'm actually like the Trumpness of it all makes me a little November, like since November, like chunks of hair, like we're okay. So you have one without the mango Mussolini. Okay, so you do, your one does not include taking over the globe and returning us to Germany, 1936. Got it. What's your apprenticeship?
Before I got ill, I used to think, oh, I'd love to be on The Apprentice, and that's the sort of ambition I had. And my friends would go, oh, you'd be brilliant on The Apprentice. And then when I first got ill, I was like, I have zero interest in watching The Apprentice. I have zero interest in ever being in anything like that before. And that kind of marked my losing of my ambition. And then I realised when I started to, after the period of taking time off work and then losing my job, and after a while, I suddenly started thinking, oh, actually, I would quite like to be on The Apprentice again. So that was where that it's a funny thing to measure it by, but that's how I knew that my ambition was coming back, was purely based on The Apprentice TV show. And I realised that my job wasn't fulfilling me. I had to deal with a whole change of identity from not being a successful career person anymore and not really knowing how to pull in that identity. I guess I then saw myself more as a mother rather than as a career person, but I still had that ambition within me. And I thought that I'm going to struggle to work full time. It's going to be very difficult for me to find a job that will enable me to move up the ladder without affecting my health. And I just could not find a way that would work for me, particularly having children. And so I started to sort of think about the idea of starting my own business. And it took me a long time to decide what to do. But my daughter at the time was starting to get into natural skincare, skincare. So body butters and all that sort of thing. So I wasn't so keen on her using all that. She had some allergies. I was being very careful about what I was using. So I was like, I don't really want her using all these cheap skincare products, and decided to learn how to formulate them myself, and really loved it. And she got involved as well. She loved making the products. So I ended up making kits for children, and making lip balms and bath bombs, and then making the kits that children could make their own. I even ran some workshops around it as well, which was a very bad idea when you have a chronic illness. And I loved what I was doing, but I was making my health worse. I just could not find that balance. And I spent all my time looking for advice, doing courses, trying to train myself. And none of the advice was working for me. It was very much like, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. You've got to put out all the social media. You should be talking to all these people. And I was feeling guilty for taking time off to recover. And it was just taking it out of me so much. And I was like, I've got to be able to find a way to run a business in a chronic illness friendly way. So I tried to do some research. I was looking up on websites to see if I could find anything, and there was nothing out there at all. So I set up a Facebook group called Entrepreneurs Against the Odds, and just started having conversations with people, finding out what their challenges were, and just inviting people in. I can't be the only person with a chronic illness running the business. There must be others out there, but I couldn't find them. So I was like, okay, if I can't find them, then I'm going to create a place and they can come and find me instead. And have created this lovely community. And over the years, that has developed into a business, which is called Excel Against the Odds, where I support business owners with chronic illnesses. I do mentoring, provide training, and I've got a membership. And I also support organisations who've got employees with chronic illnesses. So I do talks on raising awareness around chronic illness in the workplace, because there's a lot of information about chronic illness, but I don't know about in America, but in England, there doesn't seem to be much information about working with a chronic illness and being financially independent with a chronic illness. So I wanted to try and change that.
I love it. I actually did give a talk at Lawrence Livermore Labs about how employers could better support chronic illness, because I feel like there's a semi-understanding of disability. Someone has been in a car accident. Now they can't use their legs. This is the things you do, and look at them at the gym. Yay! It's all inspiration porn. It makes me livid. But there's not the understanding of the constant changes minute to minute on what someone who is chronically ill is dealing with. And that's
Absolutely.
And that's the thing that has to be educated into our entire world. Like, it's not just a static thing of what we can and can't do. That changes for me second to second.
Definitely. And I think a lot of employers just don't realise the scope of the issue either, because I know it took me a long, long time. It was only when I desperately needed to take time off that I actually admitted that I needed help, because I knew that if I...
And how hard was that? Let's have a discussion about that real quick. How hard was it to come out of the chronic illness closet?
Awful, absolutely awful. And I think it ended my career. So it was very difficult. And I think there's a lot of people out there who don't disclose because of those fears. And a lot of those fears are founded as well. It's not their imagination. There are organisations who won't support people with chronic illnesses. So I think there has to be a cultural change within organisations to better support people, because I find that a lot of people are leaving their jobs because they're not getting the right support. But that's because they can't ask for it, because they don't feel empowered to be able to ask for it. They don't feel safe to ask for support.
In the UK, do you have legal protections against that?
We do. We have the Equality Act, which does support people. If you have a disability, you cannot be fired because of your disability. But then obviously you have to be well enough to then take an organisation to court if it goes that far as well. So it is tricky.
We have something very similar, and we have to take on the brunt of the legal costs until it gets like in our favor, and then we can sue the place for our legal costs. But we do have to, like, yeah, and that's just so mind-boggling to me. If there's ever a group that has no money, it's kind of us, especially in the US, where I am not kidding when I say and with health insurance, my last hospital bill for an ER visit for 3 hours was $8,000, and that was with insurance. So just say, like, it's an expensive hobby to have.
Exactly.
Most expensive ever. So when you were building this community, what were some of the things that you heard over and over and over again where you're like, okay, this is definitely the pain point?
I think one of the issues is around taking time off without feeling guilty. So giving yourself the grace to allow yourself to rest and recover, and to do things that bring you joy. So doing that more intentionally, I think, is something that I try and encourage people to do. So rather than feeling guilty about it, actually plan it in, make it quite intentional that you are going to take time off, you are going to recover, your business will fit in around that rather than having to take time off because you're too ill and then feeling really guilty about it. I don't think that helps anybody. So I think taking time off is a really big issue for people, understandably. I think there's some other massive issues around things, trying to get funding, trying to get the right support, even just having family and friends who understand what it's like. I think a lot of people with chronic illnesses are lonely. A lot of people who run businesses are lonely, and then combining the two just creates an even bigger loneliness, I think. So trying to create that community to provide that support and understanding that they might not get from friends and family. Often people say that their friends or family might say to them, why do that? Why put yourself through running a business when you could just not work? And I think often people have that determination, that ambition, that they want to do something for themselves, and running a business can be that answer.
I can't agree more. Like, I started running businesses because I was too sick to work for other people. So somehow that meant I could totally run a business and have that energy. But it did mean that I could schedule. And when you're talking about taking that time off, I think that's one of the big pitfalls that most new business owners fall into, is that, like Sally Fields, you like me, you really like me. And then you don't take any time off and you just say yes to everything until you are decimated. And the only time I started to find any sanity or safety in my business was when I came out the chronic illness closet and I started to take weekends off and just tell people I'm sorry. Like, those are my days.
Yeah, and people really understand it as well. I think if you're upfront about your boundaries, then
you don't want them as a client. Like,
absolutely.
they are never, their money they're giving you will never be worth the pain they are causing you.
Absolutely.
So for your business, is this a coaching? I saw that you have a free download, which was the only thing I did not have time to download yet, but I'm very excited to download and take a look. Are you coaching people in this? Because I feel like when we're talking about community around owning a business, we're constantly dealing with the LinkedIn bros, like morning routine, 4 a.m., kill it at the gym, never see my children, work until I die. Yes. That kind of like culture. That's not healthy for them, for their families, for their livelihoods, and it sure is not something. Morning routines were not made for sick people. So I just want to see, like, what are you finding in the community on the best way to support each other, and what are you seeing?
So the community is very much around understanding your energy levels, understanding your symptoms, listening to your body's symptoms and responding to that and working around it. So understanding when's a good time for you to work, when's a good time for you to rest, planning your work around that, and then making sure you have the right business strategy as well. So if you're working one-to-ones, then you're very limited to how much you can earn because you're limited to how much time and energy you have. So trying to find a business model and a business strategy that works for you is so important. Then also things like boundaries we've mentioned, and scheduling, automation, and also delegating work as much as possible as well, so you don't have to do everything yourself. So there's quite a lot of different things that you can put in place to make business chronic illness friendly, as it were. So that's what I'm trying to encourage people to do, is to build the right business for them so they can enjoy their life, enjoy their business, and look after their health at the same time.
Are there any tools for automation that you're like, I am so grateful I found this? This is absolutely making it possible.
I think things like scheduling tools, so for posting social media content are brilliant. Even things like emails, I find that because of having a fluctuating condition, that I don't know what I'm going to be from one day to the next. So when I have a good day, being able to schedule things and then not have to worry about it is amazing. I think there are AI tools now which can be very useful, energy saving techniques, things like Canva or other AI tools.
Oh, yes, Canva, by the way. Let's do a huge plug out for $100 a year, unless you're a nonprofit, in which case it's free. And you could design anything from books to like social media posts, and you can like, I'm not sponsored by Canva, by the way. I'm just obsessed with it.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Oh my God. I'm an artist and I still use it I love that software. And it's drag and drop. You don't have to know anything. I don't tend to use AI very often just because I'm concerned about the environmental impact of AI. But I do use some of it, like for if you're a podcast host and you're interested in doing that, but you're like, there's no freaking way. Riverside FM, if you want to start your own podcast, and they do have a free version, and you can bring in, and it will like give you your show notes and titles and tags and everything. I'm like, I know it's killing the environment, but thank you. Like that's one of the only like AI tools I use with any regularity, but there's no way I could run this podcast without it.
Absolutely. And then there's also things like calendar scheduling tools as well, where
Ooh,
you don't have to send out
Calendly.
reminders. You don't have to go backwards and forwards 100 times with emails. And even things like automatic email responders saying, this is my working hours. I will contact you in 2 or 3 days. It just sets those boundaries without you having to feel guilty about it. And people respect that as well. So there's quite a few things out there, and it's just trying to find the right ones for you and your business.
I love what you just said because I think it's one of the most important things in any relationship, from working to children to romance to friends, is that when things go wrong, it's because boundaries and expectations were not properly set. And if I could give advice to anyone running a business, set the expectations to what is the worst day you've ever had. Like,
Yes.
don't set it to your best days. Like, don't do my optimism is going to absolutely kill me. Like, worst day, and that's the expectation. Because if you over deliver quicker, no one's going to be mad.
Also, people love it when you over deliver in terms of their expectations. I always use the analogy of a bus. If you are getting a bus and you're told it's going to take 2 hours and it ends up taking 3, you feel awful. It's like the most exhausting journey in the world. But if you're told it's going to take 4 hours and then it takes 3, you feel amazing. It's the best journey ever. So it's around that expectation. You can do that with your business quite easily with deliverables. So if you are, for example, a jewelry making business and it takes you a week to make something and send it out, say it's going to take 2 weeks. And if you can do it quicker and send it out, then they're going to love you for it. But it also gives you that time to take extra if you need to. If you've got to take a few days off sick, you've got that time, that buffer that you need.
Absolutely brilliant advice. I live by that one. That's the only path to sanity when running a business. You've seen a lot from both sides. You've been just a chronically ill person in the workforce, and you've also given talks. What is it that you would, if you had like a magic wand to fix the working world, what would you do to make it so that it's possible for chronically ill? There's so many of us who are wasting on the vine. We're the missing group. What would actually be that magic wand thing that would allow us to actually live up to our potentials and what the things we want to do and achieve?
I think the biggest thing is a cultural change, where people understand that the challenges that people face, not even just chronically ill or disabled people, but carers, people caring for children, people caring for elderly people, elderly parents, for example. It's understanding that people have things outside of work, and it doesn't mean that they're not a good employee. It just means that they can't necessarily work the set hours. One thing I find with a lot of people who are chronically ill is that they find ways to do their work in a lot less time. So one thing I would absolutely love is for you to be paid by deliverables rather than time working. I think sometimes it's really frustrating that you're expected to work 40-hour weeks when actually you can do your work in 20 hours. And a lot of people work 40 hours and they spend a lot of time chatting or standing up and walking around and things like that. Understanding that people have different ways of working and adapting the workplace for those people, I think that would be amazing. And having that culture where employers understand that people have different needs and different ways of working, and empowering people to ask for the support that they need, because sometimes it doesn't have to be a massive change. It could be a slight change in working hours, maybe starting an hour later so you've got time to recover to wake up in the mornings and get rid of those aches and pains, do some exercise and things before you start work. Or you might, if you find it difficult to work in the afternoons, having a longer lunch break so you can have a nap. It's making those changes that don't necessarily have to cost any money, but can make a huge difference. I had a brilliant example in one of my workplaces, is that I get migraines, and in one place that I was working, the overhead lights were triggering me. So every time I went into the office, I was getting a migraine. And I mentioned it, that I thought that was happening. And without me asking, they went out and replaced all of the overhead lights with desk lamps. And when I went in the office, which I only went in, I think, once or twice a week at that point, they turned, without me saying anything, someone would go up and turn off the lights and they'd all turn on their desk lamps. And I wasn't feeling like I was imposing, but it meant the world to me that they had thought of that.
You are giving such an incredible example to people who run businesses, because there's this idea of like, oh, just toss them, the next person's in. No, it costs so much money to get a new employee. It costs so much time to onboard someone. So just doing things like this, that does not cost the company money, barely costs any effort, and you have a super loyal employee.
Oh,
Win.
If you provide those changes, that means that somebody can work in a way that works for them, they will not want to leave, because any other organisation is a bit of a risk. They don't know how they're going to be looked after in that company. So it
Mm.
does make somebody so loyal to the company that they're working in, and it doesn't have to cost much at all. And often those changes can benefit people who don't have chronic illnesses, disabilities as well. So it's definitely worth considering how you can help people more.
I mean, just what we're talking about of like the unpredictableness. You're talking about life. It's not just
Yeah,
us. It's
no,
everyone. And if we have a more, if you trust the people you hire, if you believe in them and you trust them, then they will do the best possible work for you. And you will understand when something happens and they need to work from home or they need to not work that day. Like it seems this authoritarianness really creates a lot of problems. I was going to ask you because I live in the United States. And I keep saying that just because my Delulu brain's like, no, I live in Edinburgh. That's where I'm moving now. And so we're just gonna keep saying this so that I remember where I'm at. But we're in a place where they're starting to push back all of our protections, and they're talking about putting some of us on farms, wellness farms. Yay! This is totally not terrifying. I'm not scared, but there's this pushback on what we had gained as far as the ability to work, and the answer is, why would we want you? And you answered that so beautifully in that disabled people, chronically ill people, were so able to think outside the box. We're good
absolutely.
at getting stuff done. Do you have any other reasons why, if someone's a boss and they're like, I mean, this sounds like a lot of effort. What would you say about why we should be hiring disabled people?
So if you have disabled people in your workplace, it's because there are a lot of disabled people in the world. I think it's 20% of people are disabled. 33% have at least one chronic health condition. I know the figures for the UK, but I think they're applicable for America as well. And
Mhm.
that means your customers are the same as well. So 20% of your customers are disabled, 33% of them have a chronic health condition. If you employ people who understand those conditions and who understand what it's like to live with a disability, then they are going to be able to create products and services that support your customers as well. So if you want to be providing a good service to all your customers and to actually get more customers, then you need to be making sure you understand their needs. And the best way to do that is to employ people with those conditions and disabilities as well.
Standing ovation. Yes. I mean, along with this is like my big pet peeve because I ran a technology and disability podcast for a while. And I was talking to so many people who were developing technology for the disability community with no disabled people on their board. And it was
Oh,
just shocking to me because we're the club you're all invited to. You are either going to have a bad day and you're going to become one of us, or you're going to age into us. You will not escape us. So it will end up being 100%. And then if it's like 20%, then you also have to factor in all the caregivers. No one is not affected by disability and chronic illness. We are either your friends, your family, or you're one of us. Welcome to the club. We have really good jokes. We are so funny over here. But I just lost the entire thread of my discussion here. This is great. Yay, brain fog. And we're going to leave this in because I do want people to see that you can totally fall on your face and that's okay. That's where I was going with this. Please, if you're developing any products, disabled or otherwise, please put disabled and chronically ill people on your board or at least in your testing because no matter what you're making, if it works for us, it will work so much better for healthy people. It means they can use it while distracted. It means you will have the best product if you just start with universal design. That's just my scream to the universe. I keep screaming it and hoping eventually someone will listen, at least put ramps in. You started a new project, which I'm so excited about. I believe it's called Lilac, and
yes,
you
Lilac.
got government support. So I want to know first, what is this? Second, how did you get government support? I mean, not that I can do that here because we're a dumpster fire, but for people who don't live in the most terrifying timeline possible, how did you get government support and what's the project?
So there's an organisation in the UK called Small Business Britain. It is an organisation that supports small businesses. She does a lot of the lady who runs it, Michelle Ovens. She has a lot of contacts with the government. The year before last, I was invited to talk to the Minister for Small Businesses about disability and employment. I was did it over Zoom. Had a colleague who also did it, and we talked to him about the issues faced by disabled entrepreneurs and the issues we are facing by accessing government support. He really enjoyed that discussion, and Small Business Britain decided to ask him whether he would support this Lilac review, where we were going to look at removing the barriers faced by disabled entrepreneurs and the government got on board. And so I was invited to be on the steering board. So I get to go every 2 months up to Westminster and talk to government ministers. And we've got people from the board of a large bank, eBay, and a telecommunications company all on board as well. And we're looking at how government and big businesses can better support disabled entrepreneurs, looking at financial support, looking at mentoring and training support, and then also looking at any other support that they can be given as well. And it's amazing, actually. I think we're making really good progress. We've done the first interim report, which is looking at the results of a survey, interviewed lots and lots and lots of disabled entrepreneurs to find out what their biggest challenges are. We're going through some focus groups, and we're going through a more in-depth survey at the moment to come up with some findings which will be released later this year. But there's already been a finance code, disability finance code that's come out of it, which the big banks in the UK have signed up to, which is going to make it easier for disabled entrepreneurs to get backing for their businesses, financial backing for their businesses, because a lot of people find that when they are going to their bank saying, I'm setting up a business, because they've got health conditions, they're not getting the loans that they might need or the support that they may need. So it's already having a big impact. And we're currently looking at supply chains in big organisations as well to see where disabled people can fit into the supply chains and be able to provide more products and services to big organisations. So it's an amazing project, and I'm absolutely delighted to be a part of it.
What were the biggest challenges that you were finding?
So financial is definitely one of the biggest challenges. Getting support and understanding from people who understand. So looking for mentoring from people who have been there and know what it's like to run a business. Because as I said at the very beginning, a lot of the advice that's out there isn't compatible to somebody living with long-term health conditions or disabilities. I think those are probably the two biggest challenges that people are facing.
Were there any businesses that you saw that you're like, oh, I can't wait for that to come through?
Businesses? So
yep, with like the businesses that you're interviewing, people who are like, this is the thing I want to do. Are there any things that like might be on the horizon from really cool, interesting disabled creators?
So I am going actually this week up to London to be looking at different technologies that are out there to support big businesses. I know we're looking at different countries to see what technologies and support is provided there as well. So trying to get a sort of like a best in world support package that we can see what works best. And so it is really exciting to see what's going to happen. I'm really looking forward to this meeting this week.
Please tell me you're going to come back on this show and tell us all about what you learned, because I'm so excited and curious.
Yeah, it's going to be very exciting, I think.
Now, I did hear this rumor that you do have a free download. So for those, we're actually recording this right now in the beginning of 2025. And I know that maybe some of you are feeling ambitious and excited and want to do something. What's a good piece of advice, and where can someone go to download your free workbook aside from our show notes, which it will be linked directly to our show notes?
Yeah, so I have a workbook for running a successful business with a chronic illness, which just gives a few pointers on setting up your business in a way that works well with your health. So looking at things like boundaries and those sorts of things. So it just gives a bit of an explanation about why it's so important to have those in place. And you can work through the workbook and sort of make sure that you put them in place straight away. And that's all on my website, which is excelagainsttheodds.com.
And again, we're going to have that. If you go over to our website, invisiblenotbroken.com, we will have links directly to everything, including your socials. So if anyone wants to follow you on socials or go directly to your website, that'll be right there. I always close this with my favorite question, and I have to give credit to Tim Ferriss, credit where credit's due. What is your favorite purchase that you've made for under $100? Has to be health related.
Recently, I've discovered the benefit of compression stockings.
Oh my God, yes.
So those and my loop earplugs have been my saviors.
I don't know what it is about those earplugs, but just taking everything down a notch. I'm like, I do have anxiety. Oh my God. And now it's better.
Yeah, so those are my two favourites, but more recent discoveries that have definitely made a big change, and I recommend them to everybody I speak to.
I just found, when I went to London last year, I found these compression stockings, but they were also, the tension was made where you would put KT tape. So it like was almost like wearing KT tape plus compression stockings. And it was like, what is this magic? Like, how often is it that you find something that actually makes it feel better? Like, it was like, yeah, angels sung. It was beautiful. That, and I was in London, so I was very happy. But yeah. I cannot thank you enough for coming on. We will definitely see you again to hear more about the Lilac group. And I'm so excited to have you here again. And if you go over to our show notes, you'll be able to link in for everything. Thank you so much. And everyone, be kind, be gentle, and in whatever way it looks like to you, be fierce. No, don't do that. No, bad thing.